Thank you for Patreon now for donating to the Patreon.
Hey guys, videos I'm back with Carpe Vanguard Deck Profile. So I hope you guys enjoyed your like, comment, subscribe, and let's watch, shall we? This time we are covering Dark State Set 10 Almajestars. So, Unica. It was one of my favorite decks from Set 9, and Set 10 ruined this so much. I know it's not how the build works. I know this is just the build being a douche to me, because it works fine for my friend. It's just when I play it. So, long story short, in my opinion, this deck is worse than the Set 9 version, because the Set 9 version you had more space in, but then the main reason is in the Set 9 version, I was actually allowed to sack crits and draw into them. In this version, I'm not allowed to do that, for whatever conceivable reason that may be, even though there are more searchers and more ways to get crits into the soul. But that's fine. Works fine for my friend. Just doesn't do it for me, for whatever reason that may be. So let's go ahead and get this started, shall we? Maybe we can pretend like this deck doesn't have it out for me half the time. First up, we have our starter, Almajestar Peepus equals Milchi. So grade 0 boost, 5k shield, 6k base. Honorable opponent, win second, draw a card. Standard starter, not supposed about it. It's just a free draw if you win second. I gotta say, I'm a little bit biased towards this one because it has the moon in the background and it has pink bats, which just look cool to me. So all around solid starter. You don't really need this for your starter at all because none of the deck requires it. But if you want to run it just for the sake of, name theme, might as well run it for one of. Then we have the Overtrigger and Terrifying Wicked Dragon King Vamafreeze. Grade 0 boost, 50k shield, 5k power, Overtrigger, you mail him one Overtrigger in your deck. Revealed as a trigger, move that card, draw a card, choose removes, get up to 1 million for the turn. And revealed it during draft check, activate its additional effect, which is you get during your turn, all your Vanguards get plus 10k and power and a critical until end of this fight. So that's pretty solid. It basically gives your Vanguard a constant critical trigger, which is great. So the Vanguard has more pressure on top of its guaranteed extra drive check, most likely, and a rear guard kill, so that's pretty good. And if you're on regular Unica, it gets the extra crit as well, so technically triple critical with plus 10k. And it is just all around solid. It adds a lot of pressure to the Vanguard, which is great, and it's nice seeing that. If only this Overtrigger didn't hate me in this deck. Basically, triggers in this deck just hate me outside of the draw. The draw is the only trigger in this deck that doesn't hate me. Everything else does, and we will go over that when we get there. But one of Vamafreeze in the deck. It's just nice, and it still hates me, but I like running it in the case of if it doesn't decide to hate me, I can use it. Then we have 3 copies of the only trigger in this deck that doesn't hate me, Rao's Wildmaster Riley, aka the only trigger I'm actually allowed to sack. Grade 0 boost, 5k shield, 4k base, contains guard circle. If your opponent's Vanguards are grade 3 gears plus 5k shield. So, get your hand cards. Pretty nice, which is what in this deck I need to try to draw more crits, and then has an additional 10k, or it has an additional 5k shield for a total 10k shield, which is nice for guard power, which is helpful when I'm not drawing my crits to get guard power with. 3 of Riley. She's just good and solid, and normally I wouldn't rely on a draw trigger in a critical space deck, but considering the fact that, again, I'm not allowed to sack crits, I kind of have to. So 3 of Riley, tempted to go to 4, just because at this point I might need to put her to 4. Then we have 4 copies of pretty much every trigger that hates me. 4 Flinty Slasher, grade 0 boost, 15k shield, 5k power, vanilla crit. You run it just to run it. We have 4 copies of Stem Deviant Dragon, grade 0 boost, 15k shield, 4k power, critical trigger, auto rear at the end about a boost to put it to soul, choose me because 2k for the turn. That is actually needed in this deck in the case where I'm just not seeing crits and I don't want to guard with them because, I have faith that I'm going to draw into crits and then I don't draw into crits. That I just need to start calling this down, shove it to soul for battle, and then immediately soul blast it out for Unica to bind it. So it's it's just a whole thing. But yeah, 8 crits in total. You want to run 8 crits. Too bad that these crits hate me. The worst thing is, too, these crits are fine in any other deck. They don't hate me in any other deck. It's just this specific version. Even in Unica's original version, it did not hate me. It is just this specific version that these triggers hate me. And then this one. I thought she was on my side. Last night, she proved that she wasn't, because I damage checked one of them early. I had drawn 2 in my opening hand, and then the last one I had drawn as well. I lost all of my heals, and none of them went off, and I hated that so much. Anyways, grade 0 boost, 15k shield, 5k power, Caper Companion. But to be fair, though, she works in Draduald. And that's the important part, because Draduald was having hell last time, so, 4 of Caper Companion. It's nice to have, when your heals go off. For me, that doesn't happen, but, it's nice to imagine how I would feel when they go off. I always imagined it would be, good, knowing that I can live and rely on my triggers to be nice to me. But, nah, the vast majority of them choose not to be nice to me, and it's only this one that's actually liked to, let me win, or at least let me try to win. Let's move on to our grade 1s. Oh yeah, if you're wondering why I don't run the effect heals, by the way, it's because the effect heals are kind of gimmicky. I don't really like the 10k shield base and 25k shield on certain situations. I'd rather have a guaranteed 15k shield than the gimmicky ones, but if you want to run the gimmicky ones, go ahead, because maybe it works for you or maybe it works for meta. But because I'm not meta and I just do my own casual thing, I just don't run those heals. But if you want to run the heals, go ahead. Now we move on to our grade 1s. First up, we have 2 copies of Twin Marvel Dragon. Grade 1 boost, 5k shield, 8k base. I gotta say, I love its background, and it fits so well with Drago, because I remember there was a game where my hand was just pretty much all purple and red, which was just fun to look at for about 5 seconds. And I also just loved the red moon, though. But, or like reddish pinkish moon. Anyways, Twin Marvel, auto rearguard once per turn. When you soul blast 3 or more cards at the same time for your cost of your Vanguard's ability, look at the top card of your deck and put it to top or soul, and then it gets plus 2k for the turn. All around pretty solid. It's a guaranteed 10k booster regardless, and then you can put a card from the top of the deck into soul, or you can stack it on top because it's trigger. Either way, Twin Marvel is a solid grade 1, and I like it a lot. Too bad it doesn't do it before it boost, because, or like as it boosts, so you can use the skill before Unica procs off, because that would be helpful in the sense of I can send a crit from top to deck to soul real quickly and then proc off one more ability of Unica. But fair enough, Twin Marvel all around still is a solid grade 1, and I like it a lot. And even though it's a 2 of, I still see this thing a lot, like a lot, which doesn't make sense, but it does, I guess. So 2 of Twin Marvel. I sacrifice all of my critical trigger stacking abilities just to see 1 copy of Twin per game, or not even per game, I see both per game, so there's that. I don't feel like it's worth it, but I don't really have a choice in this exchange. It was kind of forced upon me against my will. 2 of. Then we have 4 copies of Irem Capricornus, my favorite card in this deck, and literally the second this thing dies, the deck pretty much dies with it. Grade 1 boost, 5k shield, 8k base, auto rearguard when this unit boost. If you have Vanguard Almajestar in its card name, choose up to 1 trigger from your drop zone or hand and put it to soul, and then if you put a card from your hand, draw a card. All around pretty nice. It can replace a trigger. If you sent that one from hand to soul, it can get you a crit into soul from drop zone, so you can guard 1 turn and then send it to soul the next, so you're saving on damage. It's just all around a pretty solid skill. I love it a lot. It can help proc up for Unica's skill to make ready for it. And not to mention that the Vanguards have to be an Almajestar, so you can use it while you're on grade 1, you can use it while you're on grade 2, and then you can also use it while you're on grade 3. All around, its skill is solid. I love this thing a lot. I think it's an amazing grade 1, which is why it's a 4 of, and it's just the GOAT, the MVP, the best card in this deck. There's nothing more I can say about this. 4 of. Then we have 4 PGs in Repelled Malice Dragon, grade 1 boost, 0 so 6k base. Continuous Sentinel, you have up to 4 sentinels in deck, unless put on guard circle. Choose from these, it cannot be hit in the battle, and if your hand is 2 or more cards, you can discard it. So in a PG, no specified base means if this is only 1 card in your hand you place on guard circle, you don't have to discard one, which is great, because that means you can be aggressive as you want in the early game, which most of the time you will be, and then when your opponent counterattacks you for being an idiot and basically going down to 2 hand cards, you can immediately throw down the PG, not have to discard anything for it, and then boom, you're safe, and then now you have the aggressive advantage, or you would if you were allowed to sack crits. If you can't tell, I am very annoyed that this deck doesn't let me sack crits, because I know it works. My friend used it, and it works perfectly fine for him. It's just me that it hates. But for Repelled Malice, it's nice. The free PG is great. I like it a lot, and you can run not Violet Dragon, what's the other one? The other one for this deck whose name Rescue Hate Dragon, because they have the same skill, but I prefer Repel Mouse for this one because it's for newer decks, quote unquote, and Unica is the newest deck to be revealed for Dark States, more or less, so for Repel Malice. And then we have our last grade 1, the grade 1 of the Ride deck, who I can't tell if that's a moon in the background or not, but if it is, I have 100. Either way, I'm biased towards her because she has a sword, but if that is a moon, that's more biased, and she has blue hair, which I don't know was more biased for me anyways. Almajestar Shorot equals Spada. Grade 1 boost, 5k shield, 8k base, sadly 1 in the Ride deck, not in the main deck. Auto when she's rode upon by Almajestar Turon equal Dinah. Soul charge 2, if there was a critical soul charge among them, draw a card. How that used to work for me is every game, or like every 3 games, I would not get one. So basically 1 of 3 games, there would be a game where I don't get the draw because I don't soul charge a crit. But the other 2 I would. You want to know what the ratio is now? 1 of 5 games, I get a critical. Meaning it went from, most of the time I get a critical to only once out of the 5 times I use this deck will I get a critical. Yep. I don't know why it is like that now. It just is. But outside of that, and its other skill is Act Rearguard once per turn, which you can use, thankfully, thanks to the grade 2. If your opponent's Vanguards are grade 3 or greater, by binding any 1 trigger from your soul, whether it's a crit, a heal, or an over for that matter, it gets plus 10k for the turn. All around pretty solid, because it allows for you to have an 18k beat stick, which is actually great, and it can bind stuff in your main phase for free for you, so if you have like extra soul lying around, you can definitely use it. The only downside is, she binds it, so unless it's a crit, you're kind of losing out on a trigger. You can therefore send a soul to use stuff like Capricorn to send it back and constantly loop triggers back. But either way, Sparta's still a solid grade 1. I like its skill. I wish the draw skill worked more prominently now, but it doesn't, because I blame Baiko for this, but whatever. And but the 10k is nice, so it might as well run as a 1 of in the right deck. Then we move on to our grade 2s. First up, we have 4 copies of Birkurian Manticore. Grade 2 is 5k shield, 10k base, continues rear guard during your turn. If you have 2 more trigger units in your bind zone, it gets plus 10k power. All around, solid card. It's a 20k swing with a Persona Ride, possibly a 30k swing, and with skill of Unica, it's probably at least a 35 with the Dragon Chain Marker 40 on it. All around, it's pretty good. It's just a good, solid swing beat stick, and there's nothing more I can say about it. Basically, the second thing that gets on the board, your opponent's probably going to drop all their hand cards for it, or they're going to drop all their hand cards for, they're going to drop all their hand cards for this. They're going to PG the Vanguard. When this stands, you're going to swing with it again. They're going to drop all their hand cards for that, and then they're going to take the Sparta column, because they know the Sparta column's 10 times bigger thanks to the 18k booster over here. But, 4 Manticorns. It's just a good grade 2. If I could get my 2 criticals into Bind Zone, that is. Then we have 4 copies of Kit's Peak Griffin, the card that has turned from the most useful grade 2 in my deck because it could just keep recycling triggers to the most useless card in my deck. Because I no longer need this thing to recycle triggers because I don't get enough triggers to use its skill in the first place. Grade 2 NSF 5k shield, 10k base, auto rear guard when this unit is placed on rear guard circle. If you have a Vanguard with Almajestar on its card name, choose 2 triggerings from your drop zone and put them into your soul. So, pretty solid. It can send crits back, it can send heals back, it can send draws back, it can send the over back. It's all around pretty great as you can just send triggers to soul, which is great because, for first Unica, you can use its ability to soul blast out a bunch of triggers, proc off the skill 3 different times, add 5k to different units, and soul blast out the crits you sent back. All around, solid skills. If only I had the ability to send triggers to soul. I mean, triggers overall isn't the problem. It's mainly just criticals, which is the majority of my triggers, so therefore it does make it a problem. And then continues rear guard to guard circle. If you have a critical trigger in your bind zone, god damn it, it was 1. It didn't need 2. I hate that. This unit gets plus 5k power and 5k shield active on both players' turns. Okay, if you have at least 1 critical in bind zone, which thankfully is the case, and not 2 like I thought it was, it's a 15k base and a 10k interceptor. Great. I have guard power. I have decent attack power. Too bad I don't get the criticals in the first place to use. I get 1 critical a game, essentially. That's how the logic works. I get 1 critical a game into my hand or my soul, and then the rest get damage checked, or the rest stay in deck. One of the 2. It's never with me. It's always against me. 4 of Kit's Peak. In the original build, he genuinely did so much, and he was a part of the reason why this deck could do so, stupid levels of soul combo loop plays. And now I can't do anything with him because I don't have the triggers to do so. When this deck starts working for me, I can actually play this deck properly. Until then, screw me. 4 of Kit's Peak. Then we have 4 copies of one of the 2 cards I blame for this, Dragon Tree Wretch Skull Kemda. Here's the reason why I blame them. Is it coincidence that the second I add in 2 cards that should actually involve deck thinning, the second I put them in, the deck stops working properly? Watch, I'm going to take out one of them, and then the second I take out one of them, the deck's going to start working again, and it's going to go crazy. But anyways, Skull Kemda, great 2 5k shield, 10k base. Auto when it's placed on rear guard from anywhere, whether it's soul, drop, zone, or hand. Counter boss 1, soul boss 1. Choose from your rear guard circles without any Draco Tree markers on it. Put a Draco Tree marker on that circle. And then subject to 1 Masques of Herodogarm. Reveal it, put it to your hand, and shuffle your deck. All around, solid skill, allows you to get a Dragon Tree marker, allows you to get your order, which therefore allows you to search for, not Leonor Masques, which was I was about to say, what's her name? Unica Masques, or Baiko Masques actually is what her real name is. So, all around, it's a solid skill that allows you to add power, it allows you to, get rear guard circles and allows you to deck thin, which, in the words of someone else, would allow you to consistently get more criticals into your hand, or soul for that matter. But in my case, no, it doesn't. In fact, it arguably made it worse. So 4 of Skull Kemda. It is a solid grade 2, except he has been completely useless in both Dragon Tree decks that I run him in, to the point where I'm kind of tempted just to scrap him and just see what happens. But 4 of Skull Kemda. It's okay, I guess. Then we have 1 copy in the ride deck, none in the main deck, of Almajestar Tyrann equals Dinah. Grade 2 is a 5k shield, 10k base. Auto when is wrote upon by you Estreo in its card name, choose Almajestar Sword equals Spoda from your soul, and call this card and that card to rear guard. So great, you get 2 free rear guards, which is pretty nice. And then act rear guard once per turn. If you have a Vanguard Almajestar in its card name, by card bossing 1, choose 2 triggerings from your drop zone, put them to soul, and gets plus 5k for the turn. All around, that's a good skill. It's a 15k base, and then you can bind one of those triggers for the sake of Sparta to make it an 18k base. You have a 33k column over there, and you get 2 triggers into soul, all for the cost of a counterblast. Here is my issue. I only ever get 1 trigger from this skill now. Before, I could get 4 to 6 triggers from the combination of these 2 from my drop zone into soul on first grade 3 turn. What can I do now? Get 1 trigger into soul, which most likely isn't a crit. And if it is, that's the only crit I'm seeing in that game. Again, I say, it works fine for anyone else. It's just me that it hates. But 1 of Dinah in the ride deck, it's helpful in the sense that it gets me triggers back. It just doesn't do anything else, and she tends to die the turn later because, no one wants to let you loop triggers into soul, even though it's not going to do anything, and it's more of a detriment than a plus at this point, considering, it cost counterblast, which is now Baiko's problem, thanks to Baiko and this thing. 1 of Dinah. Then we have our grade 3s. First up, we look at our Masques card, aka the thing that's needed for this. 2 copies of Masques of Harudagarm. Grade 3, normal order, look at top 5. Choose up to 1 unit card with Draco Trio or Masques and its card name from among them. Reveal, put it to your hand, shuffle your deck. So you don't either get Baiko or this thing, or any other Dragon Tree support cards. So you can get Demon Strider if you put Demon Strider in the deck. And then Act Drop Zone. If you have a grade 3 Vanguard without Masques and its card name, reveal a grade 3 with Masques and its card name from your hand. Ride the revealed card for the cost of stand, and if you rode, put this card to your soul. And if your opponent's Vanguard is a grade 3 or greater, and you do not Persona Ride this turn, you can activate Persona Ride, which is great because something I just talked about in my Zorgo deck profile, because I recorded the Zorgo deck profile right before this, is the fact that you can technically run the other Masques in this deck and then still get the Persona Ride. So, I mean, granted, you won't pull off like the remove from game ability, but you can run Draguled in this one, which I am tempted to do now just to prove an argumentative point, but all around, it's just nice getting that free Persona Ride, plus 10 to front row, and then, you know, having a little bit of pressure with Baiko's, you know, skill to restand rear guards and retire stuff and get an extra drive. It's just a good card. It's like, it's a free top 5 search, and then it gets you a Persona Ride and Soul. There's nothing to not like about it, except for the fact maybe this is also the reason why I don't have crits. There are 3 cards here that can be possibly to blame for the crit problem. This, or Baiko. So one of the 3. I'm tempted to remove all 3 of them and see what happens and just put them back in one at a time to see whose fault it actually is. But 2 of Mask of Harudagram. It's not a bad card. It's a top 5 search and it's a free soul and Persona Ride. So why not run as a 2 of? Because also searchable by this thing. And then we have 4 copies of Xeno Almajestar Astredo equal to Baiko Masques. So if you're wondering why it's not Unicorn Masques, it's because apparently, according to the people that have told me this, Unicorn or Uni is short for Unicorn, as most people knew, and then Baiko is short for Bicorn, which I'm pretty sure most people knew as well. And, you know, it's there for like the different constellations, which fair enough. Anyways, grade 3 turn Persona 13k base. Continues, it can only be written from a grade 3 with Astreo in its card name. Active Vanguard, once per turn, move a card with Astreo and its different card name from this unit, hand, or soul from drop, from the game. Choose one of your opponent's rear guards, kill it, and then it gets to drive for the turn. Okay, has triple drive, and it can, you know, get rid of a rear guard. It's not amazing, because you also lose out on the crit. I'm going to tell you right now, you don't get another crit, but they replaced it with a restand, which I think we all knew it was going to happen. Like, it had a piece of everything else. The only other skill it could possibly have is it made your opponent discard, which, honestly, it wasn't going to do. So there's that. And then its other skill is Auto Vanguard, when it attacks into anything. Counter Blast 1 and Soul Blast 3. Combine all critical triggers from your combine all critical triggers Soul Blaster for the cost. Choose one of your rear guards and stand it, and that unit and this unit gets plus 5k power for until end of turn for every 2 critical triggers in your bind zone. The most I ever get from this is 3, because again, I'm not allowed to see criticals for some reason. But you know, the highest my friend got was 6, so there's that. But being able to stand a rear guard is solid, especially if it's Manticorn over here, so you know it's a total of at least 25k swing, plus the Persona Ride, so 35, plus the Dragon Tree marker, so 40. And then, you know, the Vanguard also gets power as well with triple drive. Though the thing is, the Vanguard doesn't have nearly as much pressure, because yeah, triple drive is great, but then when you compare it to the other unit who actually had a crit, it doesn't really like apply that same amount of pressure to it, and therefore makes it a little bit easier to take. Like, I find myself taking the Vanguard attacks a lot more now instead of taking the rear guards, because, you know, the Vanguard just doesn't feel like it has that pressure anymore, and because I also know I can't see crits, so there's that. But 4 of Baiko, it's just like, it's been, to my knowledge, it's been argued more that Baiko is a finisher, which is fair. Baiko, honestly, I'd run down into 2 if I wasn't so concerned the fact I wouldn't be able to see her cost. So 4 of Baiko, if you really want to drop her to 2 of, because I do think people see her more as a finisher, go ahead, but yeah, that's up to you, honestly. Then we have 2 copies in the main deck, 1 copy in the red deck of Almajestar Astero equals Unica. The only real reason I run her in the main deck is because, again, finisher, but also I feel like just she is more consistent, whether I see criticals or not, than her. So there's that. But her skill is Auto Vanguard, where you trigger Soul Blaster for the cost of this unit's ability, gets plus 5k power to end of turn. Choose one of you, gets plus 5k power to end of turn. So it can be herself, but most of the time you can give it to your rear guards. Sadly, I don't think you can stack it on the same rear guard, but you can still give it to multiple rear guards. And then Auto Vanguard, when this unit attacks the Vanguard by Soul Blasting 3, bind all the critical triggers from the card Soul Blaster for this cost, and perform all the following according to the number of critical triggers in your bind zone. 1 or more, kill an opponent's rear guard. 2 or more gets a crit for the battle. 3 or more gets a drive for the battle. So all around, pretty solid. Gets a critical, gets an extra drive, kills an opponent's rear guard. It's a great first grade 3 turn move, and if you can actually pull off the triple critical ability, which I haven't done in so long, you can get all 3 while your opponent's at grade 2, which is pretty great, and not to mention the fact you can give a bunch of units +5. It's just a solid grade 3. I like it a lot. Having extra copies for Baiko's ability to go off is also pretty decent as well, but then also, being able to Persona Ride without needing to use Baiko is pretty great too. So 2 of them in the main deck, 1 of them in the ride deck of Estrella equals Unica. It's not a bad grade 3, and I like her far more than I like Baiko for the sake of colors, for the sake of look, and just for the sake of everything else. And then we have our Draco Tree marker, which is just, during your turn, if you have a Vanguard Draco Tree or Masques in its card name, or you can plus 5k power. So, it's just the standard free 5k. There's nothing too special about it. It does add a little bit more power to Unica and makes her a little bit more threatening, but only in the sense of if you have no boosters and you don't have this thing on your board. So, take that as you will. You run 5 of them in the sense that you can, actually, I think at most you can get 4 of them, because I don't think you can call this anywhere else except from hand, but if you do manage to find a way, run it and just get 5 of them for free somehow. I don't know how you're going to do that, but good luck on that. That's it for the deck. I hope you guys enjoy. Again, in practice, when I'm not the one using it, the deck works fine because it will see the crits, but when I'm using it, I'm not allowed to see crits. Every game I've played with this, I have yet to pull off triple critical, or I have yet to pull off triple critical while I'm on Unica, and I only ever hit triple critical in general. I don't know what it is. I don't know what this deck has out for me. I blame Baiko, I blame Skull Kemda, I doubt it's the Mask fault, I blame one of those two, but the whole point of the deck is to show off these 2 cards, so sadly I can't really do anything about it now, can I? So I'm going to end it here. I hope you guys enjoyed. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and just go follow Twitch. I'll see you all in the next one. Don't forget to set up your Vanguards.